Okay, so you guys have sent in a ton of articles about these explosions in Lebanon, asking us to really break down what's going on. And honestly, you're right to be curious. This is a complicated one.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple story.
We're seeing reports from, well, everywhere, really, and trying to piece it all together. So let's dive in, shall we?
Well, let's do it.
We're talking about explosions during a Hezbollah funeral in Lebanon, right? This happened September 18th, 2024. At least 12 people were killed, including children, which is just awful.
Absolutely horrific. And to understand the gravity of this, you really have to grasp who Hezbollah is. This isn't just some fringe group. We're talking about a powerful Shia militant group. But, and here's where it gets messy, they're also a political party with a lot of sway in Lebanon, backed by Iran, no less.
Right. So some countries call them a terrorist organization. Others see them as a legitimate political force. It's a complicated situation, to say the least.
It really is. And of course, everyone's looking at Israel. Some of the reports are even pointing fingers at the Mossad, Israeli intelligence. It really points to that whole shadowy, covert war that's been simmering between Israel and Hezbollah for years.
It's like something out of a spy thriller. But we should probably step back for a second, right? For anyone who isn't glued to the news 24/7, this attack is part of a much bigger, much more complicated story in the Middle East. This region has been grappling with conflicts, territorial disputes, and this deep-seated mistrust for decades.
It's true. This attack, horrific as it is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay, so speaking of the attack, did you see the part about how the explosives were actually hidden in walkie-talkies? I mean, that's chilling.
Yeah, the method is very significant here. It speaks to the clandestine nature of this conflict. They weren't going for mass casualties, it seems, more like sending a very pointed message. This suggests a carefully planned operation with a very specific strategic goal.
And this actually goes back to something we see in a lot of the reports, which is that Israel has been laser-focused on weakening Hezbollah for years. I mean, there was all that stuff about their operations in Syria a while back, targeting Iranian and Hezbollah positions. It's like a whole other layer to this.
You're exactly right. Israel sees Hezbollah, especially their growing missile arsenal, as a direct threat. And not just any threat, an existential one. They're really trying to curtail Iran's influence in the region.
It's like they're playing this high-stakes chess game, trying to stay one step ahead.
That's a great way to put it. And all this is happening while tensions in Gaza are already incredibly high. I mean, you have the recent bombing of that school, the humanitarian crisis that's been unfolding. It's like everything's connected,
Totally. Gaza's like a tinderbox waiting to explode, and this latest attack, it feels like it could be the spark.
Exactly. Any escalation there, and Hezbollah could easily get pulled in. And then who knows what could happen.
And it's not just Israel and Hezbollah we're talking about here either, right? I mean, these reports mention Iran, obviously, but also Palestine. Even the UN is trying to find a way to, manage this whole situation.
It's a tangled web, for sure. You've got Iran backing Hezbollah, both financially and with military aid, which obviously directly threatens Israel. Then you have the Palestinian question, which is always a major factor in the region. Gaza is just one flashpoint among many. And on top of all that, you've got these international players like the UN who are desperately trying to prevent things from spiraling completely out of control.
It's like trying to juggle chainsaws while walking a tightrope.
Pretty much. So, I mean, for our listeners, the big takeaway here is that this specific attack, while awful, is unfortunately not surprising. This region is a powder keg, and it doesn't take much to set things off.
And now the big question is, what's next? How does Hezbollah respond to this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They're in a tough spot. They have to respond, not just strategically, but for their own image. But how they retaliate will determine what happens next. I mean, do they target Israeli military assets? Do they go for something more symbolic, something that will inflict more psychological damage? It's a dangerous waiting game.
Definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. Well, we've unpacked a lot here today, but this is a story that's far from over. For everyone listening, it's important to look past the headlines, to really try to understand the forces at play here, the motivations, the potential outcomes. That's how you really wrap your head around a complex situation like this.
I totally agree. Don't just read the headlines, read between the lines. That's where the real story is.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. And remember to stay informed. This story's just getting started.
Absolutely. Till next time.